When my grandson Tyler came running into my study that Sunday afternoon, I was reviewing old case files. The boy rarely looked scared, but that day his hands trembled as he clutched the frame of the doorway. His voice was small, but the words carried a weight that froze my heart. "Grandpa," he whispered, "Dad is taking your house." For a moment I just stared at him. The air in the room seemed to thicken. "What did you say, Tyler?" I asked gently, motioning for him to come closer. His eyes darted toward the hallway, as if afraid someone might hear. "Dad said you're getting too old to live here by yourself. He said he's going to make it his house soon." I smiled softly, though inside I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Your dad's just joking, son. You must have misunderstood." But Tyler shook his head. "He was talking to Mom on the phone. He said the papers are almost ready." Papers. That word hit me like a hammer. I'd been a lawyer before I retired, and I knew what kind of papers could take a man's home away. I tried to hide my concern, ruffling Tyler's hair. "Don't worry, champ. Grandpa can take care of himself." But as soon as he left the room, I closed the file on my desk and stared at the old family portraits on the wall. My late wife, Margaret, smiling beside me when we first bought this house. It was the home we built together, every nail and beam a memory. The idea of losing it felt unthinkable. That night I couldn't sleep. I listened to the hum of the old air conditioner, to the creaks in the hallway, to the distant sound of a car passing by. Every noise felt sharper, heavier. Tyler's words echoed in my head. I told myself it was impossible. My own son taking my home? No, but the truth was things between us hadn't been right for years. My son David had always been ambitious, but ambition turned into greed when life didn't go his way. Failed business ventures, debts, and risky investments had worn him down. My daughter-in-law, Celeste, tried to hold the family together, but money changed everything. When my wife died 5 years ago, David became distant. He stopped visiting except when he needed something. 2 days after Tyler's warning, David called. "Dad, I was thinking," he began, his voice too smooth. "This house must be a lot to manage on your own. Maybe it's time to downsize." I chuckled softly, playing along. "Downsize? You mean give up the home your mother and I built?" "Come on, Dad," he replied, his tone tightening. "It's just a house. You could move somewhere smaller, closer to us. Tyler would love that." There it was, the pitch. I could hear it clearly now. He wasn't offering help. He was circling like a vulture. "I appreciate the thought, son," I said calmly, "but I'm fine where I am." He sighed. "You're being stubborn. You can't live alone forever. You're 80 years old, Dad. What if something happens to you?" "Then it happens," I said simply. "I'd rather it happen here." He didn't respond for several seconds, then muttered, "Suit yourself." The call ended, but the unease stayed. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen. A letter arrived from the county clerk's office requesting confirmation of ownership documents. A man came by saying he was checking property boundaries. Even the mail seemed tampered with, envelopes opened and resealed. I started documenting everything. Old habits die hard. 30 years in law taught me that evidence was a man's best friend. One evening, as I was walking Tyler back to his parents' car, I noticed my son whispering urgently to Celeste. She looked uncomfortable, glancing toward me, then away. When she saw me watching, she forced a smile and waved. I waved back, pretending I hadn't noticed the tension. That night, Tyler called me from his room. His voice was shaking. "Grandpa, Dad's mad at me. He said I shouldn't tell you things." My heart ached. "You didn't do anything wrong, Tyler. You were just being honest." "I heard him say you'll forget about this soon," he said softly. "He said your memory isn't good anymore." I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath. So that was his plan, to paint me as senile, incapable. It made sense now, the visits from inspectors, the legal mail, the rehearsed concern. He wasn't just taking my house. He was building a case to take my name, my dignity, everything. I thanked Tyler and told him to get some rest. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out my old digital recorder. If David wanted to play games, I'd make sure every move was documented. The next morning, I went to see Dr. Chen, my physician of nearly 2 decades. "Doc," I said, "I need a full cognitive evaluation. Memory, reasoning, everything. He raised an eyebrow. Are you worried about something? Not worried, I said. Prepared, he ran the tests. Memory recall, pattern recognition, logical reasoning. I passed everyone with ease. You're sharper than most of my staff, he joked, as he signed the report. Why the sudden interest? Let's just say I need proof of sound mind, I replied. And I'll probably need 2 more doctors to confirm it. That week I scheduled 2 additional evaluations, each one confirming what I already knew. My mind was as clear as ever. Meanwhile, I began noticing how David and Celeste's visits increased, not out of affection, but surveillance. They'd show up unannounced, offer to help organize my finances, and pretend to tidy my desk while subtly photographing documents. On Friday, I overheard them in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. Once the court declares him incompetent, David whispered, the power of attorney transfers. We can list the house next month. And what if he finds out? Celeste asked, her voice trembling. He won't, David snapped. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. My hands clenched as I stood in the hallway unseen. My own son, my flesh and blood, plotting to erase me from my own home. That night, I wrote everything down. Every word, every lie, every piece of evidence. I had the reports, the recordings, and now, a motive. But more than anything, I had time and experience. David didn't realize who he was dealing with. I wasn't just an old man. I was the man who taught him how to argue, how to read people, how to fight, in silence. The next morning, I called my attorney, Linda, an old friend from my court days. I told her everything. She didn't sound surprised. You'd be amazed how many cases like this I see, she said quietly. Children turning on their parents for inheritance. I'm not dead yet, I replied bitterly. I'll file a notice, she said. If they attempt to move property or claim guardianship, we'll have it blocked. But be careful. They might try to provoke you, make you look unstable. I've faced worse in court, I told her. I can handle my own son. That night, as I looked out over the porch where my wife and I once drank our morning coffee, I felt something deep and painful stirring in my chest. Betrayal from strangers you can survive. Betrayal from family, that cuts deeper than any wound. Still, I knew one thing for sure. I wouldn't lose my home, and I wouldn't let my grandson grow up thinking evil wins. The next few days moved slower than ever. Every knock on the door, every phone call, every quiet sound in the hall made my heart beat faster. I knew they were preparing something, but I couldn't show a hint of fear. When predators sense weakness, they strike. On Tuesday morning, David showed up earlier than usual, a bright smile plastered across his face. Dad, he said cheerfully, I was thinking, how about I take you to lunch today? There's something I want to discuss. I looked at him, studying his eyes. They were calm, maybe too calm. Lunch sounds fine, I said. Let me grab my coat. We went to a small cafe downtown. It was quiet, familiar, the same place we used to visit when he was a teenager, before life complicated everything. The waitress brought our coffee, and David leaned forward, lowering his voice. Dad, he began, I know you think I'm overstepping, but I'm really worried about you. You're living alone, you forget appointments, you're not taking care of yourself. I smiled faintly. Is that so? Yes, he insisted. And look, this isn't about money. I just want to make sure you're safe. I spoke with an attorney friend, and there's a simple way to protect you. A power of attorney agreement. It just means I can handle bills and property in case you can't. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching him over the rim of the cup. That sounds very responsible of you, David. Why don't you bring the papers over tonight? I'd like to read them, he smiled a little too quickly. Of course, Dad. That's the smart thing to do. When I returned home, I immediately called Linda. He's coming tonight with forged papers, I told her. She sighed. Do not sign anything. Record everything. Let him talk. I plan to, I said. At 8 p.m., the doorbell rang. David stood there with a briefcase, smiling, that same false smile. Celeste waited in the car with the engine running. He came inside, placing the papers on the kitchen table. Just a formality, he said casually. Makes life easier for everyone. I unfolded the document. The signature line already had my name printed. Neat, precise, but not in my handwriting. He wanted me to sign beneath it, legitimizing the forgery. I looked up at him. "You've been busy," I said. He froze. "What do you mean?" I leaned back in my chair, the recorder in my pocket quietly running. "I mean, you've been planning this for weeks. Forging my signature, contacting lawyers, preparing to have me declared incompetent." His face went pale. "Dad, that's not—" "Stop lying, David. I heard you. I've seen the documents. I've spoken to 3 psychiatrists who've all confirmed I'm perfectly capable. I know exactly what you're doing." His jaw tightened. "You think you can outsmart me?" he snapped, the mask falling away. "You're old, Dad. Everyone sees it. You forget things. You talk to yourself. This house should have been mine years ago." I stood slowly, my voice calm. "You have no idea how much I wish your mother could hear you right now." He flinched, anger flashing in his eyes. "You always use her against me. You never believed in me. I believed in you more than anyone," I said quietly. "But belief means nothing when greed takes over." He grabbed the papers and stormed toward the door. "You'll regret this, old man," he muttered. "You'll see." When the door slammed shut, I exhaled. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from sorrow. How had it come to this? A father and son standing on opposite sides of truth. The next morning, I sent the recording and documents to Linda. "This is enough to file a fraud notice," she said firmly. "We'll protect your property before he tries to move it." But I wasn't done yet. David had underestimated me, and that was his mistake. I began collecting every trace of evidence. Emails, bank transfers, even notes from neighbors who'd overheard his schemes. By Thursday, I had a file thick enough to build a case. That evening, I heard a knock. When I opened the door, it wasn't David. It was Celeste, standing there nervously, her hands clasped together. "May I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded and led her to the living room. "I didn't know what he was planning," she began. "I swear, I thought it was just a safety thing. But then I saw the emails." "He's deep in debt, isn't he?" "Yes," I said quietly. And this house was his way out. Tears welled in her eyes. "He told me if we didn't act fast, we'd lose everything." "I believed him," I sighed, feeling a strange mixture of pity and disappointment. "Celeste, I don't blame you. Fear makes people foolish. But you need to understand, this isn't just about money. It's about trust. And once that's gone, it's hard to rebuild." She nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let him destroy himself," I said. "The truth doesn't need my help. It reveals itself." The next morning, the court papers arrived. David had filed a petition declaring me mentally incompetent. My own son had dragged me into a legal war, but I wasn't afraid. I'd seen bigger battles, and I knew the law better than he ever would. When I walked into the courtroom a week later, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in months. Linda was beside me, confident and steady. David sat across the aisle, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Celeste sat behind him, pale and nervous. The judge, an old colleague of mine, entered the room. I stood as she called the case. "Mr. Wallace," she said, "you are the respondent in this petition. Are you prepared to proceed?" "I am, Your Honor," I replied, my voice steady. David's attorney launched into his speech, describing me as an elderly man losing touch with reality, unfit to manage finances or property. He even presented staged photos, cluttered rooms, lights left on, as proof of confusion. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. "Your Honor," I began, "I have here 3 independent evaluations proving my mental clarity. I also have recordings, documents, and sworn statements that demonstrate my son's intent to defraud me." The courtroom fell silent. The judge examined the papers, her expression hardening with every page. "Mr. Wallace," she said finally, "this is serious evidence." "It is," I replied softly. "I raised my son to be honest, but somewhere along the way he learned deceit instead." David's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him. "I'll hear the recordings," she said. I pressed play on my phone. The courtroom filled with David's voice. "Get him declared incompetent. Once I have control, we sell the house, clear the debts." The sound of his own words hung in the air like smoke. Celeste covered her mouth, tears falling silently. David's face turned ghost white. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Wallace," she said coldly, "I think this court has heard enough." The judge's gavel struck once, firm and echoing. The room fell completely silent. David couldn't even look up. His lawyer sat frozen, realizing their entire case had crumbled in seconds. "Mr. Wallace," the judge said sternly, "your petition is not only denied, but borders on criminal intent. Forging documents, submitting false evidence, and coercing medical opinions. These are serious offenses." David's voice trembled. "Your Honor, I didn't—" "Enough," she interrupted. "You will remain silent while I address your father." She turned to me. "Mr. Wallace, I've known you for many years. You've served this community with integrity and wisdom. I'm deeply sorry this matter even reached this courtroom. Do you wish to press charges against your son?" For a long moment, I didn't answer. My heart felt heavy, torn between justice and mercy. I looked at David, my only child, the boy who once used to sit on my shoulders at the county fair, now sitting in shame. His eyes glistened with tears he refused to shed. I spoke quietly. "No, Your Honor, I will not press charges. I only ask that my son find his conscience again." The judge nodded slowly. "Then this court recognizes your competency and full ownership of your estate." Case dismissed. The gavel struck again, and with that, the legal storm was over. But inside me, another storm was still raging. As people began to leave, I noticed my grandson standing near the doorway with his mother. Little Ethan ran toward me and wrapped his arms around my legs. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," he whispered. "Dad said bad things about you, but I know now he was wrong." I knelt down and hugged him tightly. "You did the right thing, Ethan. Telling me the truth took courage," he sniffled, wiping his eyes. "Dad's crying, Grandpa." He said he messed everything up. I looked across the room. David was standing alone, head bowed, shoulders shaking. For a moment, he looked like a lost child again, the same boy who once cried when his toy broke, the same one I promised I'd always protect. I walked over slowly. Celeste watched, unsure what I would do. I placed a hand on David's shoulder. He didn't look up. "Dad," he whispered, "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I sighed deeply. "Maybe not. But forgiveness isn't something we earn. It's something we need." He looked at me then, eyes red and full of regret. I was drowning in debt. I didn't know what else to do. I told myself I was protecting you, but I was really protecting myself. "I know," I said softly. "But the moment you let fear control you, it makes you blind. I almost lost my son to greed, not because of what you did, but because of what you forgot, who you are." He broke down completely then, crying in my arms like he hadn't since he was a child. Celeste stood behind him, crying too. Ethan peeked from behind her, unsure what to do until I reached out my hand to him. "Come here, son," I said. "This is still your family." He ran over, hugging both of us. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt the weight on my chest lift a little. That night, after everyone left, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, the cool night breeze brushing against my face. The stars looked clearer than they had in a long time. Maybe it was because my mind was finally clear, too. I thought about my late wife, about the years we spent building this house. Every nail, every beam carried a memory. Losing it would have been like losing her all over again. But I realized something important that night. Even if the house was taken, the love and lessons we built within its walls could never be stolen. A week later, David came back, not for the house, not for money, but for forgiveness. He'd started seeing a counselor, trying to face his mistakes. He'd even taken up extra work to pay off his debts, refusing any help from me. When he arrived that morning, he brought Ethan along. They stood by the old oak tree where he used to play as a boy. "Dad," he said, "I know I don't deserve it, but I want to make things right. Can we start over?" I looked at him, really looked at him, the man, not the mistake. "We can," I said. "But starting over doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning. Promise me you'll remember that," he nodded. "I will." We spent that afternoon together, fixing the loose fence, laughing about old times. Ethan climbed the tree while Celeste brought us lemonade. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel heavy with secrets. It felt alive again. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with gold and orange, I realized something. This wasn't a story about property or power. It was a story about pride, fear, and redemption. Sometimes the ones who hurt us most are the ones who need love the most. And sometimes forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the only way to heal what's been broken. Later that night, Ethan sat beside me on the porch. "Grandpa," he asked, "are you mad at Dad?" I smiled. No, son. I was disappointed, but anger is like holding a hot coal. It burns you, not the person you're mad at. He nodded, thoughtful. I told Dad he shouldn't have lied. He said he'll never lie to you again. I believe him, I said softly. And one day, when you're older, you'll understand. Being a man isn't about taking, it's about protecting what's right. He leaned against me, and for a moment I felt peace. The world outside kept moving, cars passing, dogs barking, but inside, in that small corner of the porch, time seemed to stand still. I glanced at the house, the old wood glowing under the porch light. It had survived storms, time, and even betrayal. And like this family, it was still standing. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, maybe this old house still has one more story to tell. And as the night settled in, I knew this wasn't the end. It was a new beginning,